supplied shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
Welcome to Success Secrets Exposed with Sally A. Curtis, where we share stories of challenge, success, and inspiration, along with practical tips and strategies to move you forward to your success. And now, here is your host, Sally A. Curtis.
Good evening, good morning, and good day to you all, and welcome to another episode of Success Secrets Exposed. Today, we're going to be talking about contribution, community, and growth. So a very, very heartfelt subject for me, something that's very, very important to me, and I have an amazing guest to share with you today as well. For those that are new to the show, I'm a content repurposing whiz for speakers, authors, coaches, and consultants. I help them turn their existing content and or their books into 2 years worth of social media posts to help them increase their visibility, their credibility, and their profitability. Effectively, what I do is help them turn their existing content into new profits, and we do that for them. As mentioned today, our topic is contribution, community, and growth. And our guest today is Eskridge, who is an expert real estate investor who currently owns and manages a portfolio of single and multifamily homes, numbering over 300 units across the USA. Sennett has over 10 years of experience in real estate investing, and he has more than 20 years of experience in business development, management, and sales. Sennett is also a multifamily coach for Jake and Gino and teaches students how to purchase multifamily properties. For those of us here in Australia, multifamily properties are like our blocks of units where you've got multiple families in blocks of units, just to help bridge that difference in languaging. He is also hosts real estate investor groups in his hometown of Idaho, bringing investors together to network and learn and grow from each other. On top of that, Sennett also hosts a yearly business summit in his local community to help that local community grow and prosper. Totally driven by self-development, Sennett has developed and attended numerous courses, including Dale Carnegie's leadership training. He lives in Twin Falls, Idaho, with his wife, Kari, their children, and his Chihuahua, Stark. So please help me welcome to the show, Sennett. Good afternoon.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
You're very, very welcome. Now, as we were just discussing, I'm a movie buff, so I do need to know, does Stark the Chihuahua, is it inspired by Iron Man?
You know, it's an interesting question. A lot of people think that Stark is named after Iron Man, but he's named after his father, Howard.
There you go. Thank you very much. Just had to ask that because I just dawned on me as we were going through. So thank you.
He does have an Iron Man suit. So it's
yeah. Oh God.
He does have an Iron Man suit for sure.
That's fantastic. I'd love for you to explain a little bit more and tell us a little bit more about your backstory, why investment and why personal development, and perhaps how they sort of contribute to each other.
You know, they actually are very much intertwined, and the reason that I do them is because I just love helping people and I love teaching people. Helping and teaching is something that I've enjoyed doing for a long time. In fact, I say, you know, the age of from 2 to 4 years old is my favorite age of children. And the reason is because they run around all day with this bright-eyed look in their, like they just figured it out. And my favorite experience is to take somebody that doesn't understand a subject and has a very complex situation and try to explain to them how it works and what to do. And when they get it, there's this moment and their eyes just do this thing and it just becomes absolutely amazing. And I get a little bit of an endorphin rush off of it. So it's a little selfish for me, but I just love that look that I get. And so that's the reason investing and personal development, they go hand in hand. I love teaching and helping.
Yeah, beautiful. I can totally relate to that, because one of the reasons I became a speaker was to see those what we call aha moments, where it's suddenly that penny drops for somebody and they just get it, and you can literally see all of the shackles or all of the weight lift off their shoulders, because they now have clarity, and that clarity gives them that little bit of certainty to be able to move forward and take that next step along the way. So and you've explained it so beautifully. Kids are so wide-eyed and full of possibilities, and they just, play in that space of unstoppable, unbridled, joyous experimentation. So, yeah,
Yeah,
beautiful.
it's so much fun.
Yeah. So talk to us too about some of the things that you've done in the past as it relates to this, the personal development as well as the property investing, because was it something that was property investing something you discovered very, very early? So I'm always curious to find out which came first. Obviously, always been a teacher, but what came first for you?
So I would say that personal development came first,
Mm-hmm.
and investing was a result of that. I quickly figured out that I was meant for more in my life, and that I wasn't in the place that I needed to be to serve the rest of the world. And that was really what the crux and the reason for my personal development journey was, is I wanted to go from where I was to become the human that could serve the rest of that world and be able to help people. Because as I mentioned earlier, I like helping people. So I started learning and growing, and it actually started in the mode of becoming a salesperson and sales training and sales skills. That's the first thing that I did. And I've always kind of been drawn to that. Every job I've had before I started becoming an investor was some kind of either sales or management. And management and sales are the same thing. We could have that conversation for a long time, but it's somewhere along those lines. And so I wanted to become the best version of a salesperson that I could be. And as a piece of that, an extension was, well, you have to be a good communicator to be a good salesperson. And then you have to have good energy, and you have to have high self-esteem, and you have to have all of these other things. And the tentacles from that just grew and grew. So I took several courses. One of the first ones I think you mentioned in my bio was a Dale Carnegie's course, which was a ton of fun. That the famous book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I went through this entire seminar and course, and it totally helped me reshape my identity and how I communicated with people. And after that, I just fell in love and started doing more and more. And I've traveled to conferences, met personal development speakers all over the United States. I have not traveled outside of the US for one yet. I'm looking forward to my first international trip. There's a maybe I'm going to go to a castle in Scotland with about 50 other personal development people and investors. Looking forward to that. It's on target for mid 2023.
Fantastic. Well, you had me at Castle, and you had me at Scotland there as well, because castles in general are on my list of things to do. So thank you. And it sounds as though we've had very, very similar journeys, because I started my career as a salesperson. I'm going to skew mine slightly more to that business development and then marketing. So I was always curious about, how do we do this? How do we do it quicker? How do we create the growth? Where's the leverage? Why does this work? Why does that not work? And like you, How to Win Friends and Influence People was one of my favorite books. I can't see which one it is on the shelf, but it's tattered. It's got writing all the way through it and Post-it notes all the way through it. So that was one of my pinnacle and first books that I read. And then I discovered Chris Howard, who was an American who came over to Australia and used to do lots of personal development events here. And for me, I absolutely became that seminar junkie and just wanted to absorb everything, and then found myself then serving that community and helping that community there as well, and then becoming one of the people at the front of the room. But what I also wanted to just share, and as I heard as you were sharing your story, I remember one of my mentors sort of eight or 10 years into that process of, full on learning and, peeling back the onion skins and working out what you were good at and all the rest of it. I remember him saying to me, Sally, stop studying strategies, start to study yourself 95% of the time and strategies 5% of the time. And that really shifted the way in which and the what I was learning, because I love strategies, but if you're not implementing them or you're not understanding what works best for you because you don't understand yourself as a human being, you actually can't implement or adapt or move forward at the pace that you would like to.
That makes a lot of sense, because we're all different people. And as you just alluded to, the strategy that works for you might not work for me. And I could think of 4 or 5 examples of it, but if it doesn't feel right and you're doing it, and I'm not saying being uncomfortable, because we all know growth happens outside of your comfort zone. But, if you try something and it just simply doesn't work, maybe it's okay to stop and try something else. And I've done that 4 or 5 different times in my life, everything from diet and exercise, changing that up to different strategies and methodologies that I like to follow in trying to figure out that best thing for me. And I'm still in the experimentation stage, I have to admit.
Yeah.
Still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I think for me, that's part of the excitement of life is experimenting and finding out what's working. But I really love how we've both also found and tried different things. And I've got that sign behind me, trust your instincts, because part of understanding myself was having that trust in self. And for me, we refer to when you get that hinky feeling that you're giving something a go, but there's that nag, there's that little hinky feeling that something's not quite right, then possibly it's not quite right. And it's understanding yourself enough to sort of understand that hinky feeling, that it might be a bit of a warning, or it might be just look at this a bit differently. Is this the right way forward for you? Because if this isn't the right way forward for you, there's absolutely 3, if not 4, if not 104, other opportunities for you to still move forward. They're just going to be different.
Right. Find the one that works for you.
Yeah. And supports you in the way in which you operate to your own natural strengths and abilities, and the way that you like to roll things out, etc. there as well. So when it comes to life lessons and movies, because we talked about this a little bit earlier as well, I'm very much a movie buff. My audience knows that I love movies, and can quite happily sit on the couch and watch a really good movie as long as there's principles and stories behind it. Do you have a favourite movie and a favourite life lesson that's come from that movie?
That's such an amazing question, and I'm gonna cheat a little bit, and I'm gonna use a series of movies instead of just one, if that's okay. And specifically, I want to talk about the Avengers movies and the Iron Man movies. As you mentioned, my dog's named after one of the Starks, right? So I have a little bit of an affinity to that realm, and I could tell you probably 10 life lessons that you can learn from Tony. And the very first one that I want to talk about is that you need to embrace your personality. At the end of the very first Iron Man, right, Tony Stark walks up to this podium and he's got this speech in his hand. Spoiler alert, right? If you haven't seen it, it's a pretty old movie, but spoiler alert. He's got this speech in his hand and he says, starting to read this thing that was all written for him about how to cover up all this Iron Man mumbo jumbo is what it was at the time. And he just threw it down and he says, I am Iron Man. And he embraces who he is. So that's number one life lesson, right? That you can get from Tony in the very beginning. Fast forward to the very end, to Avengers Endgame. One of the most recent movies, right? It's not fresh off the press, but it's fairly new. So again, spoiler alert, everybody. If you haven't seen the movie, maybe mute me for a minute. So at the very end of this movie, he's fighting, and he sees an opportunity that he has to make a sacrifice to be able to save the people he cares about. And he takes a minute and he puts everything aside for the victory.
Mm.
And the lesson is sometimes you have to sacrifice something you care about for something you care about more.
Mm.
And that's exactly what Tony did at the end of that movie.
Mm.
He sacrificed something we all care about, right? Great, intensely, we care about our lives, and selfishly be able to care about being able to live in this world, to be able to make sure that his daughter and his wife and all the rest of humanity were able to live further.
Mm.
So I have a bit of an admiration for Tony, and learned several lessons, and I could tell you 10 more, but those are the two that stand out for me.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And I think as I listen to those, I really hear our conversations that we had around contribution and community. So now I know why that's so strong for you. So yeah, hats off to you. I can really feel that, why that resonates very much with you. So let's now talk about community and what community means to you, because you certainly contribute a lot to your community. We talked, and as part of the bio, I talked a little bit about the business summit that you do, but you've also in this beautiful habit or rolling phase of continuing to educate your community, both from the investor's perspective, but also your community in whole, so they can have that forward movement and that growth. So what does community mean to you at that real local ground roots level?
So as usual, there's multiple different layers to an answer. Community can mean a lot of different things, and does to me. There's the community I live in, the physical area that I live in within, say, the 50 miles or 100 miles or kilometers maybe from Australia. That's this city that I live in, and this is an amazing place to live. And I always want to make sure that it stays amazing, right? As it grows, as people move in here from other areas, I want to make sure that they're getting the understanding of why this is so good here. And so that's one of the biggest reasons that I want to contribute to that here. I want to make sure it stays as good as it is while it grows, because I love growth. I love it when it grows. I love new businesses coming into town. I love new people coming into town. I love it when we get new buildings, and we're getting another bridge soon, and just all of these different things. But I want to make sure that we don't lose why we're so amazing here. And so I'm continually outpouring into that. And then to make sure that our schools are good and our business environment is good, so that in the future, my kids can embrace and love this same area if they choose to stay.
Yeah.
The other piece of community, right, is the community that we build, and the community all around us that are not just physically here, but we are a connected society now. We're talking to people right now all across the world.
Yeah.
And that is absolutely amazing to me. And we build this circle and this community of people from different states in the United States and different countries from the world, different continents from the world. And we want to build this community around all of us. And I truly believe in Zig Ziglar's famous quote, if you help enough people get what they want, you're bound to get what you want.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm really glad you mentioned that, because I also saw that when we first started talking, and that was one of my favourite quotes from way back then on my personal development journey. And that's really always stuck with me, that place of service and bringing other people forward and along on that journey as well. So can you share with us a little bit about what you do and what multifamily properties are, because it has a slightly different meaning to us in Australia, and that I'd like to then talk about what that's done for the communities where you've actually done that as well. So there's, as usual, two prongs to the question.
Yeah. So let's start with what multifamily is, because as you mentioned, Not a lot of people really understand it. There's a lot of words for multifamily. What I look at specifically are apartment buildings, right? And so what this is a building that has, 100 units. And this is basically 100 different houses all packed into the same building. So it's one big building, but it's got 100 different residents in it. And what I do, I've got a couple of different things that I specialize in, but my favorite one is where I take something that is not a good place to live. Let's say it's kind of junky or a slum. Slum's extreme, but kind of a junky place that maybe you're not proud to live. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to clean it up. And I'm going to make it a nice place to live. Now, we're not going to go all the way up to like an A-class, beautiful palace, but it's going to be a place that people are proud to live in. Let me tell you a simple story about a unit that I bought recently. I was talking to one of the tenants, and she said to me, "Are you going to fix anything around here, or are you going to be like the last guy that just ignored us?" And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean?" And she said, "In my bathroom, there's been a hole for the last 3 years. I can literally reach through to the other unit next door."
Oh, no.
And she's reported it several times. So long story short, that problem was fixed in under a week.
Yeah. Yes.
Like I think it was on a Thursday when she told me about it. It was fixed on Monday or something. But
Brilliant.
we make it a place that people are proud to call their home. And so we're making our community better. We're improving the physical, the visual aspect of our community and making it a place that people are proud to be around, proud to be next door to, and proud to live at. Now, at the same time, we're increasing the rents, obviously, right? So if somebody had to pay, in the States, a lot of the times we consider rent on a monthly basis. I know in Australia, a lot of times they consider it in different ways, weekly and that type of thing. But if you had somebody that's a place that you just weren't simply comfortable to live, and you had to pay $100 a week, but I could go in and I could make it a place you're really proud to live, would you have a problem paying $125 a week or $150 a week? And of course that relates a little bit different to monthly. Now you're increasing it by $100 a month or $200 a month. And what that does is that increases the returns to the investors, right? Because let me be clear, I don't have millions and millions of dollars in the bank. I'm not writing a check for these big buildings. I have a lot of people that help me buy them. And these investors, they need a good rate of return for their money when they invest into this building. And so back to that Zig Ziglar quote, let's expand that out now 3 levels. I believe if you take care of your tenants, they're going to take care of your investors. And if you take care of your investors are going to take care of you.
Yeah. Brilliant. Because what I was, and I'm so glad you actually alluded to that, because when you were talking about, the lady with the hole in the room where she can almost shake hands with her neighbour sort of thing, was obviously clearly frustrated. It had been going on. She'd been complaining about it for 3 years, understandably trying to get some action. But when you fixed it in such a short space of time, you've clearly demonstrated that you care. Now I'm sure she cares, and she's now proud of her place. And then don't you end up with a better tenant purely and only because you've been a better landlord? You've got, absolutely. And that comes back to that caring capacity there as well. So can you share with us some of the stories? I know that was the story around the building. Can you also share with us some of the stories that have come out of the individuals who you and your investors have actually helped? That was one example. Do you have any others that come to mind?
Yeah, the next one that comes to my mind is an elderly gentleman. When we purchased his building, he was 3 months behind in rent, and he was trying to make payments, but he didn't earn enough money to pay his rent. And so the first thing that an investor or a foreign person would think would be that person needs to leave.
Mm.
And maybe that's the case, but there's usually a story behind the reason. So what our property managers went and did is we went and had a conversation with them about the situation. And this person was on a fixed government income that was $200 a month less than his rent.
Less
than his rent.
Yep.
So his rent was $800 a month, and his income was $650 a month.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, there's electricity costs and food, and it was impossible for him to get there. So what we actually did was we helped him apply for several other government programs, and we actually held his hand through the process. And the government programs are now paying all but $100 of his rent. We actually were able to make it so he only had to pay $100. And the first thing we said was, now we'll actually even waive all your back rent. And he's like, no, not at all. I'm going to make it up. And so he's been catching it up. And now we're 6 months into this program, 8 months into this, and he's almost all the way caught up now. And he's proud.
Yeah.
He wants to stay there and wants to keep this unit. But if we had to just kicked him out, he probably would have been, I don't know, homeless.
Yeah, I was just going to say, quite potentially. And what a transformation. I can only imagine what a transformation that has done for his spirit as a human, to have somebody care enough to, and then also allow him to contribute again in his own way, even though it was back payments, but he's been able to go, no, I want to now contribute. And what's that going to do for the people that are around him in his life? That demonstration and that transformation that's occurred for him can only ripple effect out further as well. That's extraordinary. So I'm going to shift gears now across to the business summit. How did you start that in your local community?
Well, first, I have to give you a little bit of a backstory on my wife. I married this amazing woman. Her name is Carrie, and she is a wedding and event planner. And I could tell you tons of stories about how she's done amazing things for people in the event business. But just know she's a specialist when it comes to putting an event together. And for several years, I've been traveling to events and going to personal development seminars and conferences. And I wanted to do something like that here because, I've spent a lot of time, I've invested a lot of money into my personal development. And there's a lot of people in my community that don't have the amount of time it takes to do that, or they're not willing to invest the amount of money to do that. And so I wanted something like that right here. And also, selfishly, if I'm the one putting it together, I'm going to get time with those speakers.
Yeah.
The last speaker we had come in, his name was Luke Wren. If you don't know Luke, you need to look Luke up. He's awesome. But I spent about 15 hours with this gentleman, and he just poured into me, and we're friends. Like, we text each other and we have conversations now. So I wanted to give back to the community, but also back to me. And about 3 years ago, I said to my wife, we've been talking about this for a long time. And if you don't do it, I'm going to hire someone else to do it.
Oh, challenge. Brave man.
And so that lit her up a little bit. And about a year later, this was May of 21, we had the first inaugural Idaho Business Summit, where we had several speakers that are from the state of Idaho come in and speak. And we brought other speakers in from all over the country, Texas and different parts of the country, to really speak and pour into our community. And there was this huge outpour of success and how amazing it was. And everyone just adored it. So we immediately decided this is something we can do. And we booked the one for this last year, May 11th, 2022. And that's when we brought in Luke Wren and, big national speaker, which these guys, I'm sure you know, Sally, like they're not inexpensive to do.
No, they're not.
And there's an amazing story I got to tell you about this guy, Luke. His girlfriend was climbing Mount Everest the week before. And so he took her to base camp 1. And that was always the plan, him to go to base camp 1 and kind of send her off on this big send off. And it's a big deal to climb Everest. Like you train for a really long time and it costs a lot of money and you have to get a permit, and they only issue so many permits every year. His guide said, I happen to have an extra permit to go to base camp 2. Do you want to go?
Serendipitous.
This is a once in a lifetime opportunity, but he had a commitment to us that he had to keep. So this guy, they'll tell you this level of commitment that he had. He went to base camp 2, and 3 days before he had to be at our event, he took 2 helicopters off of Mount Everest to the airport and 3 planes to get to Idaho, and then drove for 2 hours. It took him 40 hours of travel to get here. He was here for less than 48 hours, 46 hours, I think was the exact number, and then did the exact opposite to go back to Mount Everest.
Oh, wow.
So he traveled for more than 40 hours to be here for less than 48 hours, both ways. So actually more than like 80 hours of travel. And when he was here, he had our little town in Twin Falls, Idaho. He had these 200 people jumping up and down out of their seats. High energy. We're talking Tony Robbins style event in our city. And afterwards, just the outpouring of love and compassion for us and gratitude. Thank you so much for bringing this here. Just felt so amazing. The Idaho Business Summit has helped so many people in our community. This last year, there was one gal in particular that told us that her business was going to fold. She had made the decision the day before the summit to close her business, to close it down, shut it down. She was going to go get a job. And she met someone at the Idaho Business Summit and had got the information to be able to use to partner and to now continue it. And it's now a thriving business that supports 15 to 20 employees in our community.
Oh, wow.
You talked earlier about the ripple effect. And that is something that I use on a regular basis, that conversation, because this one little drop in the ocean of what we do is now reaching out and touching so many more people. And it's one of my favorite things that I've done. And again, I couldn't have done any of it without my amazing wife. But it's definitely a passion project for us.
For both of you.
We're going to continue it on going forward. We have the next one booked. It's May 10th, 2023. If anybody wants tickets and come to Idaho.
Sounds like a great plan. I also want to celebrate that lady for actually showing up at the seminar, at the event, because I know if I look at my own life through the roller coaster of the personal development and the roller coaster of life of being an entrepreneur, there's times where it's been really easy for me to go, no, I'm not going. I'm going to run away and hide. And that could have been a very, very easy decision for somebody that had already decided to shut up shop. But something enrolled her, got her to come along, and that made all of the difference. And it literally is that one, can always be that one decision or that one person that makes a significant difference, that just turns everything around for each other and for us and for them. So I think she needs to be celebrated as well for actually showing up, because sometimes it's easier not to.
She's an amazing person.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is that you talk about that ripple effect even more, like celebrate her
Yeah.
because she showed up and she did that and now continued that business. And I could tell you more stories about people that have used her services and how much it's helped them.
Oh,
You know, and
wow.
if she would have done what you just talked about and not shown up and closed the business, those other stories wouldn't exist. She wouldn't have been able to serve those other people.
Mm.
And she's one of my favorite humans.
Yeah, understandably. So let's talk about this gift and this commonality that we're hearing with these people that are turning things around for themselves. They've been given an opportunity, some form of slight grace of some form, or an opportunity, and then they've started to turn things around for themselves. And as a result of that, they're then standing in this place of service, which is clearly something that you do very strongly, which is where you've built and, continue to contribute to your community. What does being of service to you mean? And how do you see that showing up with all of these ripple effects, both perhaps in your family scenario and your business scenario, as well as the community scenario, because there's going to be those ripple effects across the three of them as well.
How does what does being of service mean to me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that's one of the biggest reasons we're here.
Yeah.
And if when we come to this world, we're here to help other people. And it's from every aspect of our life. Think about for a minute children and what a child does. You know, a lot of people just think of children as somebody that's going to grow and physically get better and learn and go out into the world as a teenager and then eventually become an adult and become a functioning member of society. But they're missing a big point. When I had children, these children taught me more lessons, I think, than any other human being. And I'm not saying I was a good parent. In fact, I learned a lot just for struggling and making mistakes. And I wasn't the greatest parent, but it helped shape me and become the man that I am today. So my children, part of their purpose on this world is to teach me to be the best version of me. So it starts as childhood, goes on until those children are growing into teenagers. And as a teenager, right, they're now helping each other form the ability to communicate, and they're in service of each other. Even this is going to get a little bit weird, but even the bullies, the bullies are teaching people how to deal with difficult situations. And I'm not in support of that. I'm not saying it's okay, but everybody around them are teaching those different lessons. And as we grow into adults and we have our own children, now it's our job to give back to those children and to teach them to become the best versions of themselves. And eventually, when we get to the point where we're able to be self-sustaining and we've climbed the ladder of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we're able to have everything that we absolutely need in life, now it's important for us to give back to other people. And I actually believe we need to move past self-actualization, which is the peak of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and move over into others' actualizations. Because as we give back to them, it's like a mirror into our own soul. I feel like I missed half your question, but I think that answered the first half, is why.
Yeah, and the other one, and I think you've actually nailed it. There's always a wherever it goes is always perfect. And you've talked about why it was there, but I was also looking at. I'm going to say you've absolutely answered it, because you've talked about the effects that it has all through those layers. So you've talked about the rippled layers, but also the effect and the contribution that's had. And funnily enough, it reminded me of a moment, especially when you talked about, the wisdom that comes from children. And I think that is an untapped wisdom or highlight that we need to have and increase our awareness around. And I remember being at the supermarket, it was a couple of weeks ago, and there was this mum pushing her toddler in a pram, and this toddler would have only been about 2, maybe 3, so it was a little tacker. And in our supermarkets here, we have free fruit for the kids, which I always think is a fabulous idea, just as you come in. And obviously this mum had been past this before, because the kid was doing the arm was out pointing at it. And it was I watched as the mum peeled this banana, and this child got hold of this banana. Yes, she took a bite of it, but just her face when she was squishing it, and she was truly experiencing it in every way she possibly could. She was in the moment with this banana, and just the sheer joy. She was triumphant because she communicated in her way of what she wanted. B, she took a great big, zealous bite out of it because she clearly wanted the banana. But then she was intrigued through the discovery of feeling it all, and witnessing that sheer joy was such a beautiful moment. And that's, they're the gifts, they're the little elements of service that are demonstrated to us all around us. We just need to increase our awareness and appreciation and then gratitude of them. So thank you. That brought that up for me. So that was a nice gift for me. So thank you.
What an amazing moment to experience.
Yeah.
Something that you just said that is, I think, really important, and most people don't do it. That child was present in the moment. Yeah. Totally focused right there and engaged. And there's so many of us that are never present. They're distracted and they're thinking about something else. I mean, have you ever noticed that even when you're having a conversation just one-on-one, it's easy for your mind to drift and you start thinking about something else, and you're already on to the next topic or thinking about how to respond. And then a lot of times we get these things, right? We have this cell phone issue where people are scrolling or they're looking at Facebook or whatever, and they're not present in the moment. And you miss so many of life's treasures.
Very true. Thank you. So we have the last few minutes left, and as I knew this, we would zoom through this and have such a great conversation. Do you have any closing comments, firstly, and also please tell people how they can actually connect with you as well? We'll pop that across the screen.
My closing comments would be, I adore personal development. If anybody wants to talk personal development anytime, or has something to point me to, or have a tip, or they want tips from me, I adore that. The only thing I like talking about more than that is real estate and real estate investing. If anybody wants to invest in real estate, I'd love to talk to them about it. I can help people from all over the world. Most of the time, people are from the States that invest with me, but I can help people from all over and invest in some of those big multifamily dwellings that you guys said you don't have. You said you guys don't have there. Happy to talk about that. My website is senateskridge.com. It's I'm sure there'll be a link up. Yep. There we go. senateskridge.com. And on there's a button that says invest with us, or you can even book a call to talk to me one-on-one. I'm pretty accessible online. You can hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm the only Senate Eskridge you can find. It's a pretty easy one to find. If anybody wants information on the Idaho Business Summit, I can drop that link in here as well, and make sure you have that in the show notes. But it's theidahosummit.com. Yeah. It'd be awesome to have somebody come from Australia or somewhere, but
I'm sure we can arrange that. We just need to have a conversation around that, because there's lots of who's who in my zoos over here that are always looking to share a message, etc. So I'm more than happy to assist with that in any way that I can. It's been an absolute pleasure sharing with you today. Thank you so much for joining me and sharing so much wisdom. I wish you your continued success, and I wish your community the continued success of its own ripple effects that sound as though are occurring magnificently across Idaho. So thank you very, very much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I've enjoyed it as well, Sally. I really thank you for having me on, and I'd love to talk to you again sometime.
Yeah, I look forward to it. And for those that are just seeing a new website up on the screen, we now have the idahosummit.com website, so you can check out what's happening at the Business Summit in Idaho. So there sounds like a great road trip for many others in all of the other states surrounding Idaho. So thank you again, very, very deeply for sharing so much with me. And I look forward to sharing with yourselves and seeing you on another episode of Success Secrets Exposed. Thank you very much, and we look forward to sharing with you very, very soon. Have a great day.
Everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
That's it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for joining us, and I trust that you got some inspirational tips to move you forward. You can find this episode along with many more on your favorite streaming platform such as iHeartRadio, Spotify, iTunes, and more. See you next Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time for more Success Secrets Exposed with Sally A. Curtis.